Hello, students. In today's session, we are going to learn about the history, chapter number 2, from hunting, gathering to growing food. In this chapter, we will be learning about the hunter and gatherers, evidences which led us to understand about the hunter gatherers, herding and the starting of the farming, the tools and their uses, and the division of the community. So one of the earliest civilization of the human beings were known as the hunter and gatherers. But who were they? What they have done? Let us learn about this. Hunter and gatherers were one of the earliest living being in the subcontinent who lived around 2 million years ago. They used to move from one place to another. They were the excellent hunters too. They were called as hunter and gatherers because they used to hunt animals and gather the food. Unlike modern hunters, they did not kill for the pleasure. They killed the animals for the survival. Nowadays, hunters used to kill animals either for their pleasure or to make some of the different things like the jackets, the purse, the shoes, etc. But the main motive of the hunter gatherers were to survive through their hunting. But why did the hunter gatherers travel from one place to another? Let us learn the different reasons behind this. So, the first reason is as if they had to stay at a one particular place for a longer period of time, they would have eaten up all the available plants and animal resources. Therefore, they would have to go elsewhere in search of food. This is why they used to move from one place to another. Once the plant and the animal resources are over, second reason is that they moved from season to season. Why? In search of the different kinds of plants. They went to another place for more food. Plants and trees bear fruits in the different seasons. Third reason is the earliest human being plant their settlement near the rivers or the lakes. Why? Because of the easy availability of the water. Nowadays, if you want water, you have so many other resources, but in ancient time, almost 2 million of years ago, so these rivers and lakes were the only source of the water, and water is the basic need. So students, they used to settle nearby a river or a lake. Some of the rivers are the perennial and some are the seasonal. So perennial rivers are those rivers which flows throughout the year, and the seasonal rivers means where the water is available in a particular season like the monsoon season. Next reason is they would follow the animals who followed their prey or animal to hunt them. They used to follow their movement and hunt these animals. But the question arises here, what are the evidence of their existence? Did they actually exist? So the answer is yes. Archaeologists have found some of the things that hunter gatherers may have been used or they have been made, and what kind of these things were. So people have made used different kinds of tools which were made of stone, wood, and the bone. As you see in this picture, you can see different kinds of tools here. But how these tools were made? So these tools were made with the help with the bones, wood, and so the uses of these tools is used to cut meat, bone, animal skin. They also used it to chop the fruit and the roots. In fact, in some of the tools, the handles were attached and those handles were made up of bones and wood. And one such example is spears and the arrows for the hunting. So, class, if you have ever watched any of the historical movie, you may have seen that a king or a soldier used spear and the arrows during the war to kill the enemies, but they have used it for hunting purpose. Some of the tools were used to chop wood and wood was also used as a firewood. Now we all have the LPG cylinders in our home to cook the food, but at that time, wood was particularly used to cook the food. If you have ever been to villages, so you might have noticed that still people they are using in some of the villages at least the wood as a firewood. So wood was also used to make huts and the tools, and some tools were also important. So people tried to find where the quality of stone tool was available and where the quality stone was available. They can use that stone tools can make the tools. So now let us have a look to this map. This map is related to some of the important archaeological sites. Some are the Paleolithic sites, some are Neolithic, and some are the Megalithic sites. So one such important archaeological site is the Bhimbetkar and the Kurnool caves that we have in Mehergarh. Now let us learn about the phases, the time period of Stone Age. First is the Paleolithic, and then we have Mesolithic, and then Neolithic. So the earliest period is known as the Paleolithic age. This word comes from the two Greek words. First is the paleo, which means the old, and other is the lithos, which means the stone. This was the particular time period when these stone tools were found. It has been said that this Paleolithic period covers 99% of the human history. The another period is known as the Mesolithic. So this was the period when we find environmental changes, and this period begins about 12,000 years to 10,000 years ago. So class, some of the tools which were found during this period were tiny. It means that they were very small and they were called the microliths. So microliths tools were probably stuck into one handle of a bone or a wood to make tools such as the saws, etc. The last age is the Neolithic age. This was about 10,000 years ago. So, where were the uses of fire for the early human beings? So, let us learn about fire is not a new invention. So, there are so many evidences. It means that proof have been found in the Kurnool caves, which suggests that the people they were familiar with the uses of fire at that time. Fire could have used for the many purposes like to cook food, to scare away the animals, or as a source of light. In fact, it has been said that there is a very interesting story related to the invention of fire. So, changes are a very important part of life. We can see so many changes around us. Around 12,000 years ago, there were major changes in the climate of the world. And what were these changes? The shift to relatively warm conditions in many areas led to the development of the grassland. And when these grassland developed, it led to an increase in the number of deer, goats, sheep, cattle, etc. That kind of animals who can survive throughout the grass. So those who hunt these animals, now they start following, learning them about their food habits and their breeding system, seasons. So these help people to start thinking about the hunting and rearing these animals. In fact, fishing also became a very important part of that time. So, with the passage of time, the early human beings start developing themselves and become modernized. So, this was the first stage of modernization and the development that was beginning of farming and the herding. There were grains bearing grasses include wheat, barley, and the rice. They grew naturally in different parts of the subcontinent. Men, women, and the children, they collected these grains as food. Then they learned where they grew and where they ripened. This may lead them to think about the growing plants on their own and they become farmers. So could you see from a hunter and gatherer, now they become a farmer? Can you see how many changes are coming one by one? And he was not only restricted to farming only, now they start hunting also. So there was a time when these used to move from one place to another. But now it was a time when people start living at a particular place. They had to stay for a longer time period because they start growing the plants. And when they start growing the plants, they had to look after them for watering them, weeding, and in fact, driving away the animals and the birds. And there are the different ways in which the grains were also used, which they used to develop at that time. They used as a source of seed, as food, and as a gift, which was stored for food. So they began making large clay pots. They wove in the baskets. They dug pits into the ground for the storing of the grains. They are very much modernized and civilized now. Nowadays, we are living in a society, we have our neighborhood. At that time, the society would be tribes because they were living in a particular group. They have made their huts and they were doing farming, which leads towards a settled life. One such example of the pit house could be seen in the Burzon, which is in Kashmir. So the people who live there have built pit houses which were dug into the ground with steps leading into the them. Look at this picture carefully. Cooking places were also found both inside and outside the house. It depends on the weather where the people could cook food either indoors and outdoors. If it is a monsoon season or a winter season, they are going to cook indoors. And if it is a pleasant weather, then they will cook outside. Now let us look have a Neolithic tools. Stone tools have been found from many sites as well as many of these are different from the earlier Paleolithic tools, and that is why they are known as the Neolithic. These tools includes and they were very polished. They were polished to give a fine cutting edge and mortars and pastels which were used for grinding grains and the other plants. So at the same time, students, the tools of the Paleolithic times continued to be made and used. And remember some tools which were made of bones. You can see different kinds of tools that were here and they were, but remember these are the Neolithic tools. So this include polished stone tools to give cutting edges. These were the most sharp tools which were used for chopping purpose, for cutting, to chop the meat, and for some other utilization. Now, let us learn about one of the most important archaeological site, that is Mehergarh. So where it is located in a fertile plain near the Bolin Pass, and it is one of the most important route to Iran. Mehergarh was probably one of the place where women and men learned to grow barley and the wheat. Rather than they could also rear sheep and goats for the first time in this particular area. Only which particular area? That is the Mehergarh. At this site, many bones were found which proved that yes, the rearing were the important occupation of the people who lives in the Mehergarh. So bones of the wild animals such as the deer, pig, sheep and the goat were also found there. Now let us learn about the houses of the Mehergarh. Look at this picture carefully, class. So people, they have constructed their homes into square and the rectangular patterns where they have to make four or more compartments. If I'm going to compare the houses of today's generation with these houses, you can see clearly there is a big difference in the houses that we are living in and the houses that were constructed in the Mehergarh. So as we have discussed, Mehergarh includes remains of the square or rectangular houses. Each house had four or more compartments, and out of those four or more, some of which may have been used for these storage purposes. Like in our house, we have the storeroom. Just like that, they have also used one of the room for these storage purposes. So what are these, class? Look at this picture carefully. I think a skeleton of human could have been seen here. Could you see there are certain other skeleton also? What are these? These are the burials of Mehergarh. But what are these burials? When the people die, their relatives and friends generally pay respect to them. They believe that there is some form of the life after the death. So the dead person was buried under along the so many different things like the gods and some of the other useful material belong to that person. They thought these materials were probably meant to serve as a food in the next world, and all the important things which they have kept for their use, they can utilize this after the death. So students, this was all about this chapter. Now let us look some few questions. Question number 1, name the place where the burial sites have been found. Question number 2, why we call stone tools found in some region as Neolithic. Question number 3, what are the uses of fire? Question number 4, what are the ways of using grains? Short question answers. Question number 1, write a short note on the Bolan Pass. Question number 2, what was the purpose of construction of pit house? Question number 3, how was fire discovered? Long question answers. Describe the 3 stages of the Stone Age. So students, you all are requested to solve these questions with the help of reading of the chapter. Thank you.